if you think about it, by the way, I mean, we'll talk about this with Howard in a second, but there's how many people in London? Is it 8 million, 9 million or something? Live in London? And he won by 275,000. That's, like, not loads. We'll talk about turnout as well in a moment. 13 candidates stood for election. But was anyone ever going to beat either Labour or Tories? I mean, ultimately, that's one of the problems. Reform UK candidate Howard Cox claimed 3.1% of votes. And he's with us now. How are you, Howard?
Hello, Ian. I'm okay. Touch of man flu coming on.
Oh, now you can stop and, you know, not necessarily put your feet up, because I know you never put your feet up. Listen, so, look, you and I did a load of podcasts before this, probably about 20 of them, which was all about your journey and questions that people had for you. And I suppose, you know, as a smaller party, you probably know you're not going to win. How well were you hoping to do? What was your own prediction for what you genuinely thought would be your result?
Well, absolutely. There's no way I was going to become Mayor of London. And we've got to be honest about that with the way this system works. Especially, this is the first time we've had first past the post. Yeah. Before, it was proportional representation, preferential voting. Your second vote counted, in other words.
Yeah.
But not this time, except for the third vote for the list thing. There's 3 votes: the mayor, the constituency vote, and also the London-wide list vote, which is the way Susan Hall's got on now on that thing. Yeah. Now, our private polling showed that we would get 2 to 3 on that listing. We've got 1. The wonderful Alex Wilson. I'm delighted for him. We decided, I was asked, would I like to be the first choice? And I said, no, Alex has worked very hard, for the last years and years and years with the same sort of groups of people, and he deserves to be on that. And he is on then. So in answer to your question, directly, quite honestly, I'm disappointed, but more really, just like the way you introduced the thing, I'm very, very angry that he's got a third term.
Yeah, and I think it was... I mean, just by the way, talk us through the moment of because I said to you beforehand, are you going to be up there on the stage when they do the the reveal, as it were, and read the results? And I've been to I remember I was broadcasting from City Hall a few years back when Boris was elected mayor. So we're all aware of how it works. All the candidates stand around, but I thought this was rather interesting because I don't think Sadiq Khan said anything about Susan Hall, did he, in his speech?
No, he was, I think, very disrespectful to all of us, particularly Susan Hall. I mean, I went to shake his hand, and say, well done, congratulations, this is a democracy, you're in, no problem at all. He didn't, he put his head down and walked past me as I put my hand out. That's the sort of man he is. And he did the same with Susan Hall to some extent. He eventually did shake her hand, but he did it very reluctantly. And there's also other groups there, very right-wing groups there, who stormed off the stage beforehand, etc. So it's a bit of an eventful little declaration, but there were most of us were there, etc. And no one applauded him. He has no respect from most people. And we're talking about how many people voted for him. When you actually go through it, you said about how many people in London could vote. It's about 6.5 to 7 million can vote, and only 18% voted for him.
See, that in itself, I know you can apply this to every election. If you add up all of the votes of all the other parties, most people didn't vote for him in that respect. If you widen it out to those that didn't vote at all, then you're right. What is it? You said 18%, only 18%.
Yeah, absolutely. That means 82% didn't.
Yeah. I mean, and again, you could apply it anywhere, but nonetheless, quite a powerful number, isn't it? That 82% of people did not vote for the current mayor.
Yeah, I mean, there was only a 40% turnout. I think last time there was 42%. So there's 60%. And that's the problem with our politics right across the UK, is this apathy and the complete disillusionment with the current politicians and politics in general. As you know, we did the podcast, and you knew my policies pretty well. And fundamentally, when I went round to various meetings, in the year, I was the first one to declare in May 2023 that I was standing. I went around on 3 major policies. One is I'm going to get rid of all of you, Les.
Yep.
The second one was I've got to triple the number of bobbies on the beat with police access points, etc. Wouldn't cost us anything, and I'll explain that if anyone's interested to know how that would happen. And thirdly, more affordable homes. Now, when I talk to people, I used to stand on the stage and I take off my rosette and say, let's just talk the issues and the politics. Whether you're left wing or right wing, Ian, Everyone liked those three policies.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved them. And yet I only got 3.2%. Now, go figure what's going on out there. Our problem is, and it's very much so, considering Reform is actually the third most popular party at the moment in many polls across the country, after Conservatives and the Tories, Conservatives and the Labour, the hustings on ITV, BBC and LBC only included the two big parties, the Greens and the Lib Dems. I wasn't allowed to be on them. So how can I get my message across? And the whole aspect of the way politics is done in communication and in your profession, you're restricted by a thing called PERDA.
Yeah.
For 6 weeks before the actual election, you're not allowed to talk to us.
No. I mean, if I did a chat like we're doing now, I'm sure many of our listeners and viewers are already aware of this, but if you and I had done this chat a week ago, I'd have had to have done an equal chat with every other candidate. I mean, that would be the only way around it. Even if I'd mentioned your name, I would then have had to have mentioned all of the other candidates.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. It's just not fair. I'm not suggesting, and I've got a lot of respect for Mr. Binface. He was one of the candidates there, and a nice guy he was. I met the guy, shook his hand, and a lot of things he said were quite amusing. It's a bit like, the Screaming Lord Such days.
Yeah.
It was good fun. But the thing that happened is the serious politicians on that stage, including me, could not get our message across to Londoners. Yeah. Because every time, we did very well. In fact, I think out of the 14 constituencies, where we kept our deposit, for example, or in 12 of them, I think, and also we increased our polling to match national polling. Sure. We are going places. We're an insurgent party. We're doing well, but we're not allowed. The media, particularly in London, is very left wing. We cannot get past them. And it's interesting that during that PERDA period, all we heard about was Susan Hall and Sadiq Khan. No one else.
Yeah. Howard, stay with us. We're going to come back in a couple of moments. A little more to talk about on this issue.